My name is Michael Gibson. I am the Product Support Manager here at Linvio. Today we're going to go over PaymentConnect 101 is what we're calling it. Kind of an overview, generalized overview of PaymentConnect. Try to hit as many topics as we can. Again, while we're going through this, please at any time ask questions. I have some people standing by kind of ready to help answer. So first off, what is PaymentConnect? PaymentConnect is a 100% native payment management solution hosted exclusively at Salesforce. We do credit card and e-check processing, seamless integration with processors like Authorize.net, PayPal. We also support eWay and WorldPay. We do also offer payment-based workflow automation. What that means is you can do email receipts, dropship notifications, if you want to automatically generate software keys based off of incoming payments. So you can run an incoming payment when it comes in, fire off some kind of workflow that uses that as the trigger. We do commerce and billing frameworks. So if you have something like an online quote or invoice, you can set that to an online checkout page. I'm actually going to show you an example of that in a little bit in just a minute. We are an Aloha app, meaning tabs, objects, and apps do not count against limits in Salesforce. And we're suitable for business to business, business to consumer, and nonprofit applications. The big key benefits of PaymentConnect is the real-time integration of transaction data and events with Salesforce CRM data. So payments will be integrated into Salesforce. They are carbon copies. We're going to go over that in a few minutes as well. You have the ability to apply existing Salesforce tools, the user interface, and third-party applications to transaction data. One of the biggest ones is there's no limit to number of processor connections. To use the system, you need to have Authorize.net or a PayPal, basically a bring your own gateway type of thing. So if you have an Authorize.net account and you have 2 PayPal accounts and you want to have them all using in the same org, you can do that. No, we don't have a limit. Typically, probably the most of our customers use 1 processor connection, but you can have as many as you like. And this also runs securely in your Salesforce instance. There is no middleman. You're not calling out to Linvio. We're not involved in your transaction past where we pass it over via the API. Again, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. So our agenda for today, we're going to go over supported processors and the checkout options, what's involved in configuring an account. We're going to run a couple live transactions in Salesforce, talk to you about product upgrades, a few pitfalls that we see commonly happen in customer accounts, and a brief Q&A. So hosted and native checkout options, the difference between the two. Native is definitely our most popular. Gives you the most control over your checkout experience. You remain in Salesforce the entire time. This is either internally for your internal customers or people checking out as well. You're remaining on the Force.com platform. We also offer hosted, which redirects to your payment processor. So it'll redirect over to Authorize.net, redirect over to PayPal, something like that. Processors that support the native terminal are PayPal, Authnet, and eWay for Australia. Supported hosted checkouts, PayPal, Authnet, WorldPay, and eWay. And again, multiple accounts can be used. So the setup and configuration of your account, and for those of you who are current customers, you probably know most of this. What we do is when you first sign up with us, we get your login info, log into your org, go over the installation process with you. We do the installation setup and configuration that's included in the original purchase. We connect it to your payment processor merchant account. So if you have an Authnet account or a PayPal account, we connect it to that. If you don't have one, we have several contacts at PayPal and Authorize.net to help with setting that up for you, if you don't have that. We do basic site setup and changes to your page layout, do some live transaction tests, check for conflicts, make sure there's nothing that's preventing a payment record from being created. If there is, we walk through it with you. And then after that's finished, we do a follow-up walkthrough. So the follow-up walkthrough, usually about an hour to an hour and a half. We go over on a GoToMeeting with you and your crew, go over some payment transactions. We do it in your account to make sure that everything's working like it's supposed to. So what is a PaymentConnect license? PaymentConnect license allows you to run transactions, allows you to view payment records, allows you to do reports, anything involved in payment transaction processing. So the people that need a license are anybody who wants to do that, anybody who wants to run a transaction, view transaction data, create workflow based off transaction data, and a non-licensed user is limited. They cannot see the reports that you're generated. They can't see transaction detail. They can't run actual payments, obviously. The license to PaymentConnect is unlimited, meaning you can run 1 transaction a month, or you can run 10,000. There is no limit. We don't sell it on a usage basis. If you buy PaymentConnect and you run one transaction a month, you're paying the exact same amount as if you're running 20,000. Again, you're not calling to Linvio. You're not doing any kind of, we're not any kind of server that you're calling to. We also first set up in gateway simulation mode. This puts PaymentConnect into a bubble. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more in just a few minutes. Only to be used for developers. In non-live environments, we use it at first when we first set up the product. We try to go to live mode as quickly as possible, so that way you can start taking transaction, and that is fully active payment processing. That means you're fully actively putting processes through or transactions through to PayPal or Authorize.net. We also have relay scripts. The relay script is like a giant ear that sits inside of your processor account, and any transactions that come through that processor, they're going to go directly into your Salesforce account. We create them as a carbon copy of the transaction record, and again, I'm going to show you that in just a second. So let's go ahead and go into our org here. And what I have here is our contact, very non-cleverly named webinar. A couple different ways that you can get to run a transaction. What I'm going to do is a simple transaction. A contact calls up, basically wants to give you his credit card. Over the phone, here's my information. We have a payment terminal button. We also have recurring payment buttons. You can use either one of those. The difference being, this may be kind of obvious, payment terminal is a one-time transaction. AuthNet or PayPal recurring transactions will allow you to set up recurring payment profiles, or they're often called ARBs. So if webinar calls up and says, okay, I want to go ahead and make a transaction, this is the payment terminal. I talked about multiple processor transactions. You can pull down, we're going to go ahead and use the AuthNet one for this. And the payment, I'm just going to just call it payment, make it for $105. Why not? I'm feeling generous. That information will automatically tally in the total amount section. The contact is webinar. If he was related to an account in your system, that account would also be related here. You can do charges and authorizations. A charge is typically what you think it is. It's a charge of a card. An authorization, and you may hear me explain this if you have the product, it's you go to check into a hotel, and they're going to charge you $100 a night for 3 nights. They swipe your card. They authorize for $300. You check out a day early, so you're only actually paying $200. You can actually capture that authorization. So you can authorize for $300, and then up to 30 days, you can capture $200. By far, charge is the most popular version that we do. Whatever card types are supported by your processor, we support. So for example, Authorize.net supports these: Visa, MasterCard, Amex Discover. We support them as well. So put in my obviously real credit card number, as you can clearly tell. So the information we're going to pass over to Authorize.net, the total amount, which is up top, credit card information, and the billing information. Typically, the billing information needs to match that credit card number. So if you have a Visa and the Visa is matched to this address, it'll go through. We're going to see that if you put in a wrong address, wrong CVV, there are no false positives. These are all live, and they're all live checked by Authorize.net. You can't run a bad transaction. Yeah, the system just won't let you. And it's not our system. The actual payment processor won't let you do that. So we are webinar, I know, cleverly, 1700 Test Road. Everything looks good to go. When I hit review transaction, before we do anything, this is going to take us to a review screen. Authorize.net has not been notified of this transaction yet. We haven't done anything. What we have done is create an in-process payment record inside of Salesforce. PaymentConnect is going to automatically update that. We have something called the PaymentConnect site guest user, and it's kind of a background user that will update these records live when we hear back from Authorize.net. So everything looks good. When I hit submit transaction, you're going to see the screen's going to gray out. You cannot make 2 transactions at the same time. You can't double the transactions. This also goes in the next section for voids and refunds. You can't do 2 things at the same time. When we see this success back, the check mark, transaction completed, that is now a live response from Authorize.net. Transaction's been completed. We're good to go. If for any reason this was not completed, bad card, bad CVV, something was wrong, this is where it would tell you. And by the way, this also applies to our online checkout, which I'm going to show you in just a second as well. Everything went through. There is a section on the bottom for stored payment methods. This is kind of a fancy way of saying storing a credit card. We don't store it inside of Salesforce. This one would be stored over in Authorize.net as it's called SIM, Customer Information Manager. PayPal uses a similar version called reference transactions. Basically, you're storing credit card information over at the payment processor. Later on, when you want to run another transaction, it will make a tokenized call over to that payment processor, return the encrypted card info, so you still won't see the full card, and it stays over at the processor, and then you can run a card against that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and unclick that one because we already have it saved. Now, when I click continue, and again, if anybody on this call has ever been on a training of mine, this is what I always say is the most important part of the talk. You're looking at a carbon copy of the payment record. And why that's crucial is if you change any part of this, change the amount to $0 or change the currency ISO code or the status and hit save, you're only going to be editing the record in Salesforce. Again, carbon copy of the one in AuthNet. You want PaymentConnect to do its job. Its main job is to update payment records for you. So we actually have a section here for doing voids and refunds. When I go back to the contact webinar and scroll down, there's going to be a section here for payments. Now, whatever you relate your payments to, they come related to contacts, accounts, and opportunities. You can also relate them to your custom object. So if you have sales orders or cases, or well, cases is a standard object, but if you have a custom object that you've created, you can make a payment terminal button. You can make payments relate to those. For this one, just keep it really simple. This is standard payments on a contact record. So let's say Webinar calls up and he made a payment yesterday for a new toolbox for $17. When you go back into that payment, there's going to be a section here for payment management. Again, you can stay inside of Salesforce the entire time for all types of these transactions, for voids, for refunds, for regular transactions. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and hit the refund button and say I'm going to give him all of his money back. You can do a partial refund up to that original amount. So I can give him his full $17.13. I can give him $6. You can keep doing partial refunds until you get to that main amount. The only thing you can't do is you can't go over that original amount. The reason being is because payment processor won't let you, for good reason, because you don't want to put the decimal in the wrong place and give this guy a $1,700 refund for a $17 charge. So, and I always put this in, again, if you've ever been on a demo with me, the cheapskate. When I hit refund payment, again, graze the screen out. You cannot make two refunds at the same time. You can't make two charges, can't do two voids. AuthNet called back and says this is a successful refund. If something was wrong with the refund, if you're outside of the refund, if it's past 6 months, or if it's already been refunded or something like that, the system won't let you. So now, when I reload the page, you're going to notice the status actually stays as completed. However, the reason for that is when we scroll all the way down on the record here, there's going to be a related payment. A related payment, a refund, is actually a technically different transaction, has a different transaction ID, so it's two transactions. It's related to that original one, but it's listed as a refund. Now, again, when I go back to Webinar's contact, regardless of what kind of transaction it is, when I scroll down to his payment section, and I'll go to his whole list, every payment that he makes historically will be listed here. So these are all the payments that he's ever made. Some of them have been authorized, some of them have been completed. You can see it's a transaction. This one's a credit. This one's a refund, etc. That's inside of Salesforce. We actually have we have an online checkout page called Site Checkout. This first one, just a quick example, this is from an opportunity. So an opportunity, you can configure it, and this comes with the standard package. There's a quote page where you can send to people from an opportunity. It'll pull the contact information, pull the item names from the list, and take you to this page so they can do an online checkout themselves. They can use, we do support e-checks. So if you have e-check enabled over in authorize.net, you can have it enabled here. Same kind of example. They're going to be doing an online checkout that's almost the same as if they were inside of Salesforce. The difference is they can't control the amount. They basically can just put their own contact information in, billing information, and then submitting the payment. This one, the second one that we have, this is for one of our donation pages. This help feed the hippos to make a $100 transaction. By the way, what you're seeing, the Linvio demo account and the background, the white, the blue, and all that, that's an example of a site template that can be applied, so you can change this to look any way you want. You put your own web branding on it. Obviously, this is our demo account, so we're going to have demo information in that. But you can put any kind of CSS styling images to make this look identical or as close as possible to your custom site. On the processor connection record, we do include a lot of dashboards. We have a couple on the processor connection. For current customers, if you don't have this, these are things that you can add to the processor connection layout if you don't already have them. A couple of them there. Example of some more dashboards here. These are campaign revenues from different campaigns. So we have here the campaign payment totals for the Help Feed the Hippos, for our electronics campaign, for our mini store. Just information that you can pull. Now these come standard with the product. You can build them out. Obviously the beauty of Salesforce is that you want to be able to build out dashboards, reports, as a matter of fact. We do include a few reports to get you started. This is a kind of generic one. This is just a list of all payments that have ever been made. Obviously this is going to be kind of a giant list, but this is kind of an example of something you can do. You can obviously whittle this down, say I only want to see people that used Visa cards, or I only want to see people that, the last 100 days or whatever. That you can do, you can put all that as well. Back on the payment button, let me go back to, for example, the sample authorization that we've done. We do have a couple of other buttons. We have a send payment request. You can use that if you have a scheduled payment or an in-process payment that you want to send out so people can finish it online. We also have an email receipt button. We do include the button with the product. We include a template that you can edit to get you started with that has the information about the product, the itemized line info, if there is any information about the contact and all that. You can build your own, obviously. And you can also run workflow. What we typically see people doing, the question we get is, okay, that's great. I want to automatically email receipts. You would use standard Salesforce workflows for that. So create an email alert and say, okay, when a payment status comes in or payment comes in and the amount's greater than 0 and the status is completed. So you don't send them out for authorized payments or canceled ones. When it meets that criteria, then you can have it automatically fire an email receipt out. Again, pretty standard Salesforce workflow kind of technology that does that. So what if I'm on an older version? We do have upgrades. We do actually upgrade the product with fixes and features and enhancements. We do that fairly often, kind of as needed. We do it when something's needed. For a managed package, which we do not auto update. The updates are frequent and they contain configuration settings like pick list options, page layouts, record types that we do manually. For that reason, upgrades are performed by us. We typically will do them in a sandbox. In fact, we recommend most upgrades through a sandbox unless it's a brand new org, or if you just accept that there may be issues and you kind of waive responsibility and say, oh, no, go ahead and put it in production. There's nothing in there anyways. We do those under a support ticket. For a bug fix, typically we'll do those when the bug fix is available. You don't need upgrades if everything's working fine. Again, it's just if there's upgrades, if there's a fix to something that you've had issues with. But typically we just do those as needed. So some pitfalls to avoid, and the first one is a big one. Carbon copies, which I showed you before. The biggest rule of PaymentConnect is do not edit a payment record manually because there's not really a good reason to. Manually updating the record will not change the payment in the payment processor, and I kind of showed you that a little bit before. That's only going to change your record here. So always let PaymentConnect do its job. Let PaymentConnect update the record for you. Call over to AuthNet. By the way, the relay script I showed you before, they're origin non-specific. If you do a transaction here and you refund it in AuthNet, or if you do the transaction in AuthNet and you refund it in PaymentConnect, as long as it goes through AuthNet, just using that as an example, that relay script is going to hear that change, and the change is going to be called back over to PaymentConnect. So if you have 10 people working in Salesforce and 20 people working in AuthNet, whenever a change is made to a record, a transaction, a void, whatever, those are going to be reflected back in Salesforce. Another big one that we run into with a lot of people, custom triggers and required fields. They're fun to use. It's great to use. It's a way to really kind of keep track of your data. But if you impede PaymentConnect from doing its job, which is updating and automatically creating records, then your payments might not post in Salesforce correctly. So we almost always recommend using a batch script instead. Let the transaction process and finish. The batch script can come along later and change anything. So we really recommend not having that. Something you might notice is if you do have accounts required, we do create contacts for new incoming payments. Even if account was required, we're actually able to get around that one. Pretty much every other required field or trigger, if it stops PaymentConnect, it only tries once. So keep that in mind. The big question that we've had from a lot of the demos that I've done, what's the difference between the simulation mode, which is called sim mode inside of Salesforce, and a test account? A sim mode is PaymentConnect in the bubble. You're in Salesforce and we kind of put a wrapper around, a wall around Salesforce. You can make as many calls to whatever pretend processor you want. They'll all be successful. That's fine for doing just generalized testing, but we usually would recommend using a test account. So, for example, Authorize.net, they have you can get a developer account. They're free. They work exactly the same as a standard Authorize.net account. Calls over, makes live calls to AuthNet, and then you'll hear responses back. That's a much better way to test. It's what we usually recommend if you're ever going to do that. More about sandboxes. Typically, we have people that create sandboxes off of their main org, full sandboxes, development sandboxes. When you do that, keep in mind that all the settings for PaymentConnect will stay the same. One pitfall we see is that the API key, those are the credentials that you use to call back over to Authorize.net and make a transaction. Those don't change automatically. That's going to get copied over to a sandbox. If you leave all that, plus the site's URL, which I'll talk about in a second, you could get either payments made in both places or records only made in the sandbox and not in production. So if you're ever creating a sandbox, we do have some best practices on this. The main one is, this is what a relay script kind of looks like. This company, secure.force.com. In production, it's hosted in an HTTPS environment. In a sandbox, it would be an HTTP. It's an insecure, but it doesn't matter because it's test anyways. Again, it's something that we see that some people run into. How do I find more help? Well, we have a bunch of free versions. Our forums over on Linvio, by the way, most of these can be accessed by going to linvio.com. We have our product forums. We have a YouTube video channel. We are constantly updating that with new videos. We have 2-minute videos, 5-minute, 10, 20 minutes on not just PaymentConnect. We have it on all of our other products. We also have specialized ones, how to create an ARB, how to use tokenized card services, which is SIM, which is the saved credit card info. We have a bunch of different ones that you can choose from. Inline documentation inside of Salesforce. If you click help from this page from any object in Salesforce, you'll get that help object. So if you're on contact, you click help for this page, you'll get Salesforce's help documentation. If you're on any of our objects like a payment record, click that and that'll actually open the inline PDF version of our help guide. And then we have tons of documentation over on Linvio. If it's a more specific error you're encountering, something like that, we do have a support portal. It's a paid support version. Support's not included with the product. How we do that is we take an authorization to cover a couple of hours of time. We only charge against that authorization if we actually use time. For bug fixes, if it's a confirmed bug, we cancel the authorization. We provide a bug fix as soon as it's available, and then we upgrade you for free, so we don't charge for those. We do custom projects. Now, some people don't realize that we don't just write the program. We actually do customizations as well. We have some implementation partners that we work with they do fantastic work. We also do some in-house as well. So if you have a small project, a large project, contact us via the support portal and we can have you talk to somebody on our development team and they can kind of assess what kind of thing you're looking for. We also can help in support with, if you're new to us, and this kind of goes back to when you first sign up, if you're not sure if you need an AuthNet account or a PayPal account or something like that, we can also assist with trying to find which one of those would work best for your organization. Typically, we do that either in the sales process or in the early stages of the installation. We also do full training. And this is not just PaymentConnect training or events training. We do Salesforce 101 or 201 or whatever. We tailor it to your organization. So if you have everybody new to Salesforce and you don't know what a contact is, we can help with that. If you have advanced development people and they all want to get busy creating custom triggers and that kind of thing, which we don't recommend, then you can contact for that as well. And again, we have several implementation partners that do a fantastic job on that as well. So I'd like to go ahead and open up the floor to questions or comments to see if anybody has anything that they would like to ask. So let's see. Question about custom payment sources. Where is it? How does it work? Okay, let me go ahead and show you guys that. So custom payment sources, we go back into here. So for example, if we're on a contact, custom payment source is basically whatever object you're coming from, what you want to autofill into the payment terminal. So if I go, let me go ahead and go here and go to the custom payment sources. You can set them up for standard objects like a contact, an account, an opportunity. For example, here's some custom ones. A service package, that's a custom, but for this one, an opportunity. If I set this up, I can set up what automatically gets passed in. So I have an opportunity. I want my users to just click a button on opportunity and the payment name goes in, the information, everything goes in without me having to do anything. You can actually specify that here. The tax, what you want the tax amount to be, the shipping, the total amount, and you can kind of change this around. So if I go to an opportunity now and just kind of pick one, this backup generator for Studio Kitchen, there's also going to be a payment terminal on the opportunity. So when I click that, you'll notice it's going to take you to this exact same payment terminal that we used in the contact walkthrough I just did. This time, though, because you're coming from an opportunity, the payment name is going to be mapped from the opportunity automatically. The amount is going to be mapped automatically. If you had other things you wanted mapped, you have an invoice number, you want to map that over as well, you can do that. So that's what a custom payment source does. And again, you can use those kind of as much as you want. So people ask about the void and refunds. Okay, so let me go back to a payment. The differences between a void and a refund. A void is voiding out an authorization with one caveat. Authorize.net, when you run a payment, and let me go ahead and go to a payment here. So here's an authorization. Let's use this car payment from today, because I believe this one was from, yeah, this one's through authorize.net. So an authorization is the only thing you typically would void. You see there's a void and a refund. Authorize.net runs in a batch cycle, so even if you run 30 transactions, they sit in a queue inside of AuthNet and they run in the middle of the night. What that means to you is that if you want to give him a refund on this $550, if it's not the middle of the night yet, it hasn't actually batch run over in AuthNet, you would void this out. Starting tomorrow, next week, next month, past that, then you would use a refund. A void will void the entire transaction. A refund will refund part of the amount. PayPal are completed instantly. So when those are done, you don't use the void button. You would immediately be able to refund. So the difference between the two is if you use void, this one is a void. It's just a reason for a void. That is not required. You don't have to put that in. And if, again, you saw me earlier do a refund is you can do a partial amount. You can do a full amount. You can't go over the full amount. And you can do as many as you want. So this 550, I could do 10 refunds of $55 if I want to. And then when those post back, then that's going to show back up in your Salesforce org. So somebody asked about recurring payment. Okay, so that's the other fun part. So let me go back to the contact. So I showed you briefly before, there's a PayPal and AuthNet recurring payment. Let me go ahead and go to the AuthNet recurring payment. Very similar to PayPal. The only difference is in here there's a second section for PayPal to allow a initial amount. Authorize.net does not offer that feature. So the subscription name, Airbnb subscription profile, we're just going to call it, that's a generic one. You can start it today. You can start it anytime in the future. So typically they would be started today, but you could say, okay, I'm calling him up and he doesn't want to actually start until February 1st. So then on the first of the month, we're going to charge him. So I'm going to schedule every 1 month, and you can do a trial amount and a full amount. You do need the recurring amount. Trial amount is not required. Trial amount I usually call is like a gym. If you join the gym, they're going to charge you $10 a month for the first 6 months and then $30 a month after that. You could do that. If you did it like that, you just say, okay, I want $10 a month for the first 6 months and then 30 for the remaining 6 months. You don't have to do it like that. You can just take it completely out of there and just say every month, starting on the 1st, we're going to charge him $30 for 6 months. You can also leave that blank. And by the way, on all of our pages, we put as many help bubbles next to each section as possible. If you want to leave this as an open-ended subscription, leave that blank. What this will do is charge him on the 1st of every month $30 until the end of time. Technically, it's 9,999 occurrences, but nobody's going to live 10,000 months. And then from there, you check out the same way. Put your credit card information in and your card code. And this time, instead of hitting submit to submit it, you're going to create a subscription. And let me show you some that have already been created. Go to the recurring payment section. When that now gets passed over to AuthNet, and you're going to see this recurring payment profile. This is a good one. This one's for PayPal, so you can see kind of the difference. Very similar, AuthNet and PayPal to this. There is now going to be a section, a record created in Salesforce that's called a recurring payment profile. It's going to work kind of similar to a payment. Just like you wouldn't manually edit a payment, you don't manually edit a profile. If I come up here and I change this from active to canceled, it won't reflect over in PayPal. It'll keep doing that. However, we do have a section called Profile Management. There's a bunch of stuff you can do. You can cancel this completely. They call up. You know what? You guys have been charging me $12 a month. I'd like to go ahead and suspend it or cancel. There's a cancel button. There's a suspend button. Suspend is if you want it to pause but not permanently stop. If they have a credit card that's going to expire, you can update the card details so that way you can update it before the next one goes through. If they have a new billing address they moved, you can update that. You can also update the amounts. For this one was $12. You can actually change that. Your prices went up to $15 a month. You can change it in here. The only thing you can't do, this is required by the processor, you can't change the interval. So the frequency like this one is every 1 day. Now, typically they'd be months or weeks or something like that. You can't change the interval and you can't change the date. So if you have it running February 1st, every month on the 1st, you're going to have a transaction go through. Those are going to keep going through until you do something to change it. If you need to change that, and again, processor requires this, you would cancel this one and create a new one. If you just want to change the terms, if you want to change the amounts, you can do that though, or if you want to change the billing info. Let's see. So I think Heather asked that. Heather, I hope that answered what you needed to know. People have asked about accounting packages and integration. We do have partnerships with Financial Force and Accounting Seed. We do have a QuickBooks export utility. I can show you that really quickly. So inside the processor connection, we actually do have a section to do a QuickBooks export. The QuickBooks export is basically you're just going to be exporting as an IIF file. You can export information from your different accounts. It takes a second to come up. So for this one, we have a ton of different accounts. You can export this all to IIF. The integration packages that we have with Financial Force and Accounting Seed, they allow you to create invoices with Financial Force or the same version of their invoice over there. And you can have an online section for that, so you can send out an online invoice for people to pay, and it will pay that Financial Force invoice. Then you can cash match it, do cash receipts, post to your journal as a GLA, all that kind of stuff. Looks like somebody else just had a question about how does that integrate with our other products. We do have other products called Events. Event does event registration. We have Quotes and Invoices that does quotes and invoices. We have a package called Donations. Those integrate with those. Basically, PaymentConnect's the engine behind those. So PaymentConnect will be the engine, even if you're not taking an actual payment. For example, in our events, we have online event registration for free registrants. That still uses PaymentConnect to build contact records. It just doesn't take online payments. We also have, like I said, implementation partners, and they will create customized version of pages that will utilize this page, the site checkout. They'll have their own custom Visual Force page that will get redirected to site checkout. We help people create those, and again, our awesome implementation partners do that as well. I know there's a couple of you listening, so you guys are awesome. Thank you for helping out with customers. So everybody on here, I really want to thank you guys for being on this with us. I hope this has been helpful for you guys. We do have a couple ways to get a hold of us. We have in sales, you can contact Derek directly if you want to know more about different products or you want a personalized demo of any of these. If you have interested in support or custom projects, then we also have our support portal as well at linvio.com/portal. And again, I want to thank everybody for attending. Hope this has been helpful, and everybody have a great day and a great rest of the week.